All right. So, quick review. This whole chapter is about the holiness of the church. And of course, there's short answers coming at you from this angle on what it means to be holy and the 3 steps that go into that. However, we recognize that the church is not perfectly holy. She's holy in how she was made and what she was made for, but she's got her issues in her members. Got to check that. Oh, I just forgot to sign in. All right. And so we looked at the story of Galileo and how the church, you can see in this desire, the church's desire to move everybody towards God, towards heaven, towards the truth. Nevertheless, she doesn't handle Galileo very well. But we talked about how Galileo made advances in science that seemed to conflict with the Bible. And we talked about his teachings, Galileo saying that this is not necessarily incompatible. We have to let science be science, let religion be religion, recognize that they are often intertwining, but they should be supportive when you read them in their proper context. And we also talked about how this applied to evolution. Okay. We took that intentional tangent before finishing the story with how the Catholic Church did limit Galileo's speech to a real degree. And in doing so, I think Galileo might have been hurt or frustrated. And so he actually eventually publishes a book that is contrary to the requests of his friend, the Pope, Urban VIII. And he is found guilty of vehement suspicion of heresy. Okay. All right. And his daughter would take his penance for him. So brush up on your knowledge of Galileo. We talked about that a lot. So you can count on some questions coming your way on that. Talked about the vocations and a short lesson on why priests don't get married and how that points us all to heaven, whether we become a priest or a nun or not. The consecrated life and how you are trying to follow Jesus Christ all the more radically, living the life that he lived in poverty, chastity, and obedience, aka the evangelical counsels. And in a very different way in married life, raising children, leading one's family to heaven, called the domestic church. So those are the 3 vocations we talked about. And then we went through the process of becoming a saint. Saints who are set apart by their heroic virtue and fidelity to God's grace. They show us the holiness of the church in that they are models and intercessors for us still today. And then we did this 4-step process. We'll call it a 4-step process to becoming a saint. If I were to ask you that on your short answers on your test, it's a 4-step process. Get diocesan approval to become a servant of God. When the Vatican agrees, you are venerable. When you got a miracle, you're blessed. And then with the second miracle, you can become saint. Okay? I say 4 because I don't want you to think that doctor of the church is the 5th step. That's just a very separate added title 35 people have gotten over the years out of the thousands and thousands of saints. But it's a term that you will hear if you stay active in the church, so I want you to know what it is. And know the criteria that the church has for declaring a miracle. In that video you saw, you got 5 criteria for a miracle to be called a miracle. Now, what makes a martyr different? Very good. You need to know that martyrs do not need any miracles to be canonized. And even today, there's an expansion of the term to a martyr of charity, so that a guy like Verbus Lafleur, he could be canonized as a martyr without miracles simply because he laid down his life so willingly, so freely for others. All right. So that lesson. We talked about Mary. This might be actually next to the topic of faith and science, the most difficult topic, theologically dense. To understand this chart, how everything Mary does, she is a precursor for us, the members of the church. She shows us how to live, how to follow Jesus Christ. She shows us what we were meant for. Of course, be able to connect the left and the right in clear and concise sentences, of course, for a short answer question. That brings us to today, lesson 5, Charlene Richard, Little Cajun Saint. All right. She's born January 13th, 1947. You talk about lives of saints, that's not a long time ago. Is that like 65 years? So if she was still alive today, she'd be about 65, 66 years old. I mean, that's like my parents, frankly. That's the age they're at. She's the second of 10 children, big Catholic family. Should be easy to remember where she's from because it's the same as her last name. Charlene Richard is from Richard, Louisiana. Y'all know where Richard is? No, Bradford doesn't. You head out towards Rain, Crowley. You shoot north, and it's kind of next to Eunice, I think. But yeah, so head west on I-10 and shoot north a little bit. You'll be there. It's not far at all. Maybe 45 minutes from where we're standing today, where she grew up. Now, let me describe this because a lot of times we read lives of saints and we say, wow, they were so committed, they were so holy, they were so grace that we feel very distant from them. And that's a problem that can exist. With Charlene Richard, you don't get that sense. When you ask people, and there's, of course, many people today who knew her still out there in Richard, she was very unremarkable. She was smart, they say, but her siblings were smart too. So there's no signs of special graces given to her at a young age or at her birth. Unremarkable, she enjoyed sports. I couldn't find out which sports she enjoyed. She enjoyed horseback riding. She enjoyed the standard country American things. Um, she was devout. She'd go to church, much like all the other kids, Cajun kids, of her time. So there wasn't really, in complete honesty, there's nothing that stands out about her. She's just a normal person, like you might pass in the hallways today. Except y'all are 15, 16 years old. As we're going to see, she's not going to live past 12. But there's a turn of events. She goes from a very regular blending in child to having visions of a woman dressed in black. And she had these, I believe, for 2 or 3 days. Charlene has visions of a woman in black who would soon vanish. So this woman would appear to Charlene and soon vanish. Just kind of disappear, just sending a very quick, subtle message to Charlene. Of course, black is an image of death and sorrow. And so the implication here spiritually is that death and sorrow are paying a visit to Charlene. After a few days of this, Charlene is taken to the doctors in Lafayette, where she is diagnosed with leukemia, blood cancer. Now, this man is, so while this is a saint in our hometown of Lafayette, this man brings her all the closer to us. Father Joseph Brennan was so when I tell this story of Charlene and Father Joseph Brennan, he's a newly ordained priest at this time, so he's a young priest. But he would eventually, years after this, become chancellor of Turling's Catholic High School. So what relevance does he have to the story? He has a lot. So Charlene is going to suffer with leukemia at Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital, which you're all familiar with. Father Joseph Brennan is the priest that is stationed there. Every hospital, especially at least in a Catholic areas of the country, has a Catholic priest that's on call, and that was Father Joseph Brennan. And he, of course, would visit this young girl who was suffering much, and he would pray with her. And he'd become her chaplain, her spiritual father for the last 2 weeks of her life. And this is obviously this vision that Charlene had, that was unique and special. But the second thing that separates her is how her life ended. She would pray every day. Father Joseph Brennan would show up to her room. She would say, "Okay, Father, who are we praying for today?" And she is suffering physically immensely, and she's thinking about other people, and she's asking Father Joseph Brennan for intentions for her to pray with. This is a 12-year-old girl who knows that she's probably going to die, and who is thinking about other people. This is where it really gets remarkable. And Father Joseph Brennan would give her intentions, and within the short time that she was in the hospital, these intentions would be happening. People were converting. When she prayed for their conversion to Catholicism, they would convert to Catholicism. When this faithful person or not faithful person perhaps, was suffering and sick, and Charlene prays for them, they would get healed. And Father Joseph Brennan is making these connections, talking to Charlene every day, and then seeing her prayers get answered. A powerful intercessor, of course. Why? Because she's very close to Christ. And when we suffer in life, it is an invitation to get closer to Jesus Christ on the cross. That's all it is. When God deals with us, and Charlene was given special graces to do it to the max, to suffer and to not think about oneself but others is really the epitome of love from what Jesus taught us. So there's a lot of spiritual miracles happening at the end of her life. She would only be in the hospital for 12 days, and she would die at the age of 12. Maybe that too could be a connection to Mary, who's always portrayed with 12 stars around her head. But she wasn't in the hospital for long, and she would die at the age of 12. She's brought home to Richard, and you see her grave pictured here. Now, spoiler alert, if y'all are still here in 2 years, you will probably visit this grave site for your senior retreat. Because the retreat house that y'all will probably go to, and what Turlings has been going to for many years, is right next to this graveyard in this Catholic parish. And here's a beautiful quote from Father Joseph Brennan, who says, "I see Charlene as a witness for people of all ages to the power of resignation and acceptance of God's will. What does that mean? Is Father Joseph Brennan says, I see her as an example to young people, aka y'all, to submit to God's will, to accept the hard things that come your way. She wasn't different in any way except when the crisis came in her life. And it came very early. She accepted it with faith and trust and love. Jesus, I trust in you. And so, now what makes Charlene different? Why is she, anybody guess why she's probably the most popular Cajun saint? She's young. And so it can be a little bit more remarkable for somebody to find this level of holiness at the age of 12. Good job, Logan. That's true. But I will say this, there are already many miracles being recorded from people that go to her grave in Richard. They go to her grave, they pray for this intention, and boom, miracle happens. It's almost remarkable. And you look at how Charlene's life ended, her prayers are so powerful and efficacious, that people are converting, and that people are getting healed. It's as if she continues this in heaven. She's healing people and she's interceding for people. It's almost like that was her call from God, in a way that other saints may not have had that charism or that call from God. But she came, she was perhaps sent to earth to suffer and bring others closer to God. And so there's a lot of miracles attributed to Charlene Richard today. Now, I told you that Verbus Lafleur might have the fastest path because he probably doesn't need any miracles to get canonized. Charlene Richard would need miracles to get canonized, but it seems as if there's already a handful that the church can pick from to get scientifically evaluated and documented with the Vatican, and she could move along the path very quickly, because that's what's already happening. So hopefully I'll get to go pay her a visit senior year. What's the little box? It's a good question. I think it's there's just her picture in there, and this could even be an old photograph because I don't honestly remember it being there. It could be a photograph of her. It could be her personal items. Yeah, but I don't see that labeled or advertised. But I could see where it looks like there's paper in there. So, not sure. But it's very visited gravesite. All right.